Netflix has a new series called The Tylenol Murders, which tells the story of many people that died to cyanide-laced Tylenol. Crazy. I would highly recommend you watch it. Now, Johnson & Johnson is the maker of Tylenol, and they were caught up in this media frenzy, causing them to have to actually recall Tylenol. So I got some questions on what is a drug recall and what's involved. So let's get into it. A drug recall from the FDA standpoint is a voluntary action taken by a company to remove a defective or potentially harmful drug from the market. Now, while the FDA rarely initiates a recall itself, it plays a critical role in its oversight and coordination. Let's talk about kind of what's involved in recall. First thing is the initiation of the recall. This is the voluntary recall by the drug manufacturer. So these drugs are basically recalled and initiated by the pharma company when they discover there's a problem. Contamination, mislabeling, for example, potency issues could be danger, adverse events that weren't uncovered in clinical trials. In some cases, the FDA will say to the company, they'll request, hey, you need to take it off due to the adverse event findings. The second step after that is notifying the FDA. If the company does a recall, they have to tell the FDA and submit a written recall strategy. What's their strategy for removing the product from the market? The FDA will review it, and then once they do that, they will notify customers, recover the product, and verify whether it's effective and what exactly are the issues. They'll do some testing. They'll also classify the recall. So they classify the recall based really on the level of health risk. Class 1 is serious health risks or death. Class 2 is temporary or medically reversible health issues. Then there's Class 3. Now, Class 3 is not likely to cause adverse events or health consequences, but it violates the FDA's labeling or manufacturing regulations. Then there's a public notification. You may have seen some of these things, especially with foods, but the FDA will publish a recall Class 1, and sometimes Class 2 recalls are also published. The media usually will report on it. There'll be a press release. Sometimes for urgent recalls like Class 1, the FDA may issue a public alert or work with the company to issue a press release. Then, to recall an execution, they'll notify stakeholders. The company will notify distributors, pharmacy, doctors, sometimes even the patients. And then eventually the product is retrieved and pulled from the market. Now, a lot of times in these situations, the company will investigate the underlying cause and then think about corrective action. Sometimes they just pull it off the market. They'll be monitoring and oversight to make sure that, the drug, if it's going to come back to the market, they might put it out in small batches and limited quantity or distribution. That's actually what a REMS product is if you someone that works in the industry. Now, sometimes there'll be a termination where the FDA formally ends the recall when it determines the product is going to be, has been successfully removed rather, and that the proper corrective measures are taken in place. And there's a lot of reasons for an FDA recall. Again, contamination could be one of them, like a bacterial contamination, a particulate contamination. There could be mislabeling or packaging errors. There could be, again, potency issues, formulation issues. All those issues can contribute to a recall. There could be manufacturing defects as well, and maybe stability issues with stability testing or failures around that. And of course, what's very common are adverse event reports. And I'll tell you a quick story. When I worked at Merck, was involved in the Vioxx recall. So this was one of the biggest blockbuster drugs for patients with arthritis, and I didn't know at the time, even though I was called to the do a deposition, that Merck allegedly did not disclose information from a clinical trial on the potential cardiovascular outcomes, the negative cardiovascular effects on the heart with this drug Vioxx. Ends up getting recalled from the market, never to be put into the market again. And we had heard, anecdotal things from physicians that some of their patients were getting heart attacks and strokes. And of course, the drug was ultimately recalled. So, and a lot of times that puts a bad kind of rap for that particular drug's mechanism of action. In this case, it was what we call a COX-2 inhibitor or cyclooxygenase 2 inhibitor, and it was eventually removed from the market. So that then the question becomes, are other COX-2 inhibitors going to be the same way, right? They're going to have the same problems. So it can sometimes have a class effect if the FDA is really concerned. All right, I hope that was helpful. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, follow me, and comment below. Let me know what types of topics you're interested in hearing more about. I'll talk to you guys soon.